It released on March 29th, 2011. It was directed by Eric Parsons and written and designed by J.D. Straw, along with the rest of the Telltale team. I'm of course talking about Back to the Future, the game, Episode 3, Citizen Brown. Hello! I'm your host, Mitchell Farley. I messed up my own name. Everything else went so well.
You messed up the one
maybe
part.
I should just stop messing around with these intros.
You messed up the one part I thought you couldn't possibly mess up. But I guess that's good, because you got the rest down perfectly.
Yeah, well, damn, I'm not, happy about that, though. Well, okay. Hi, my name is Mitchell Farley Wolf. I'm here with Dustin Jackson. Hey, Dustin.
Hello, Mitch. Hello, Citizen Mitch.
This is the Telling the Tale podcast, where we're going to go through each and every one of Telltale Games' individual episodic game releases that they put out through their lifetime. Boy, howdy, do we have an interesting one for you today. First off, I think it's worth noting, before we even jump into the episode proper, we are the only Telltale podcast I know about.
Yeah, I think. I to be honest, I haven't looked up if there's any other ones.
Yeah, I don't want the news that there are, but...
If there are other Telltale podcasts, keep it to yourself.
Keep it to yourself. I don't need that stress in my life. I don't want to compete with someone. But if we are the only Telltale podcast, it's possible, if not probable, someone's going to come to hear discussion on what happened at the Game Awards.
Oh. That's right.
Dustin,
we got a little bit of news.
Do you want to talk about that?
I'll let you probably remember all the details better than I do.
I don't think there are too many details, but... Well, two things happened that were related to Telltale. One of them was that some ex-Telltale developers got together with a new studio, tale as old as time at this point, and are making a Star Trek game that very much looks like it's going to play in the style of the Walking Dead forward Telltale games. Right. That's cool, and I'm excited for it. I'm not a big Star Trek guy, but also, I'm just glad that these developers are continuing to get work and to do things that are like this. They seem to enjoy doing it.
Right, and their talent shouldn't go to waste.
I will say that, being that it is technically not Telltale, we don't have an obligation to cover it with an episode on the podcast. Although, maybe, I don't know, if we finish everything else, then maybe we'll get to it. Here's the bigger piece of news for us. Telltale Games themselves, the company called Telltale Games, has announced that in addition to The Wolf Among Us Part 2, they're working on another new game. Another new episodic 5-part adventure narrative game.
Wow.
Based on The Expanse, which is a science fiction book series and television show by James S.A. Corey about outer space.
Wow, the outer space himself?
The outer space. I looked up The Expanse. I gotta be honest, I had not heard about it at all before this news.
Me neither.
Our friend and listener of the show, Milo, said that they recalled hearing some other podcasts talk about the show and they seemed to like it. That is literally the only word of mouth I've heard in my life.
I had never even heard about this before now.
Yeah. I looked it up a little bit. I caught some plot details. It's about societies of people based on Earth, on Mars, and in the asteroid belt sort of cooperating and living together. And that seems pretty cool. But I don't know much about it other than the main character of the game, Telltale's Expanse, is going to be played by the actress who portrays her in the show. And that seems to be a popular character in the show. That's pretty cool.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. You can probably tell, listener, that we're floundering a little bit to know what to say about this.
Yeah, neither of us really know much.
Yeah, I in addition to not knowing that the game or the game's origin series even existed, I was pretty certain, I would have bet money on it, that Telltale Games was absolutely not working on more than one game.
Yeah, isn't that weird to think about? Like, they come back as a much smaller crew, mainly to just get their old titles back up, and now we're getting 2 games from them?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
weird.
Well, I wouldn't say mainly to get their old titles back up, because they've been working on the Wolf Among Us Part 2 for a very long time now. That's the bulk of what they are doing. But, yeah, so there's this other game, too. Something that they were criticized for late in the in their lifetime was that they were working on so many different games at once that none of them got room to breathe. None of them could, take their own time to shine in the spotlight and get some good press on them before just moving on to the next thing. In addition to causing more crunch at the studio because they were working on so many things at once. And now they're immediately working on 2 things at once.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, The Wolf Among Us 2 was announced like a while back, right? How long back was it announced? Like a couple
years? The Wolf Among Us Part 2 has been in development for at least 2 years.
Okay, so maybe this is kind of a similar thing where they just announced it like really early, and we might not even see it for a while, which is still a weird thing to do. I don't necessarily think that's a great way to go about it either, but maybe it will have the room to breathe a little bit.
Possibly. Something I know about the show because of some very brief research sessions that I embarked upon is that it is entering its final season. And the first episode of its final season came out the day after the Game Awards.
Oh, shit. What timing?
Yeah, so it seems like the announcement of this game was actually very... If you are in the know, this seems like, oh yeah, of course, this is the time for that kind of thing. But it certainly didn't seem that way to us. Still, that's a cool thing, and I think that we can confirm if it comes out while we are still doing this podcast, we will do it for the podcast.
Yeah. I don't want to say I was particularly elated when we saw the trailer and saw it was Telltale Games, but I'm not like dreading it like I am CSI. It was just kind of a weird feeling of, oh, that's another obligation to throw onto the plate.
I was kind of excited, but I was more excited at first when I saw the trailer and I saw Telltale Games, and I thought, oh, Wolf Among Us 2 is in space? That's wild. That's a very big departure.
What a big change.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it just turns out we haven't even heard anything about Wolf Among Us 2 in a long time. I hope it's doing well.
Yeah, so they put out a press release on their website talking about The Expanse just after the Game Awards. And they were talking about, so why no Wolf Among Us 2 news? And they said, well, it's just not time yet, but there will be some news about the game very early next year.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, that is good to hear. I have high hopes for the game, for both of the games. I really hope that this new Telltale can live up to old Telltale, if not exceed it.
I'd be down to see him kind of make a resurgence.
Yeah, I would be excited about that. So that's that. That means that with Wolf Among Us Part 2 and The Expanse, that's 10 more episodes on top of the 140 that we're going to do anyways, making a nice even 150.
That's not bad.
That's not bad, right? It is more than it was.
It's more, but it's a nice non-weird number.
Yeah, and maybe by
that time... That's like Pokemon.
Yeah. Maybe that by that time we're only doing like one episode of this podcast every month. Because we're doing as the games come out.
Don't get my hopes up.
Wouldn't that be something to look forward to?
Barely
talking to each other.
Oh, we only have to talk to each other once a month. I'm salivating.
uh,
Although,
yeah.
are they still gonna do them like episodic? For some reason, my understanding was Wolf Among Us 2, they were just gonna drop them all at once. But
No,
I guess
they
I
are
don't know
still doing
why.
them episodic.
Okay, I don't know why I thought they were gonna go down that route.
Well, they're developing them all at once, which is different than how they did it before.
Okay, so they're making them all at once, but they're still gonna be releasing them one at a time.
Yeah, this is a
Interesting.
response to a labor problem that they identified within the old Telltale, which was that they would put out the first episode of something as soon as it was done, and then they'd be put on the fast track to have to put out all the other episodes really quickly, even if they weren't started yet.
Yeah,
Um,
I think this is definitely a change for the better, both for that and so I remember when The Walking Dead season 2 was going, I forget who it was who said it, but they mentioned something about they would write the episodes around the players' choices they make and like the popular choices. And I don't love that. I
Yeah.
I think I would much rather see them get a nice solid story and stick with it that way. Even if it's something like this, even if it's like, your choices affect the gameplay, I want to see what their vision is unaffected by stats, by player stats and stuff.
In addition to that, doesn't it make you kind of feel bad if you are a person who picked a minority choice
Yeah.
and then the next episode is built around something you didn't do?
Yeah, like I specifically remember someone. Maybe I'm making this up now that I think about it, but I specifically remember someone saying, like in an interview or something, that in The Walking Dead season 2, I believe, they specifically killed off a character because people didn't like them. And I liked that character, but now that I say that out loud and think about it, that does not sound like a good call to make. So
Well,
I wonder how much truth there is to it. This was like years ago.
They were famously making bad calls at that time.
That's true. So it would be in line with them around that time. So yeah, I think the way they do it like this is for the better.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the idea of like not having episodes 4 or 5 when you release episode 1 even close to being done at that time is super risky. I understand that, like,
remember what happened with
distance
the last
between
season of The Walking Dead.
Well, yeah. But the distance between episode 1 and episode 3 is or episode 4 is like 3 months. So you do have 3 months to do it, and that's a lot of time. You can get a lot done in 3 months. But you can't guarantee anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I also don't think that they should just be doing nothing between the months and keep the gap between them artificially produced in order to just space out the release. I also think that's a little weird, but it's probably preferable to the alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine because it gives you something to look forward to and doesn't necessarily affect the development of said game and story. I feel like if you're relying on the feedback and the choices players make, that can really shake up a story in a negative way. And I know a lot of people did not really care for season 2 of The Walking Dead. So yeah, I just think this hopefully works out better for them.
Additionally, before we start on this week's episode, we were made aware of a Flash game that
and
was
that's
produced.
the end of that sentence.
We were made aware of a Flash game. You hear about these? That was produced to release alongside Back to the Future, the game, called Back to the Future Blitz Through Time. It was made by Mediatonic, who would later make Fall Guys.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
And produced by Telltale. And put on, like all the Facebook. It was on Facebook. It was on some of the Flash game websites. Mm-hmm. It's basically a reskinning of Bejeweled Blitz,
which I've never played.
I've played briefly. It's Bejeweled. Yeah, that exists. We're not going to cover it on the show. We just want to say we know about it.
Yeah, don't worry, we're in the know.
Yeah, we're not going to cover it on the show for a similar reason that we're not going to cover that Star Trek game on the show, which is that it is not developed by Telltale. That's really the hard line we're drawing. If it
Also,
is,
it's really hard to play Flash games these days now that Flash is dead.
we've done harder things
That's
for this
true.
show. Yeah, but there are barriers to entry. Of course, it very much feels like a Telltale game in that it is difficult to access and might or might not be erased from the internet very soon. But yeah,
it's in the spirit.
But sure, that game. Now we've acknowledged it.
We've paid
It's
our dues.
It's on the script of the show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna try to make a joke about that, but nothing came to mind because I've never played it. I have literally nothing to say about it other than, wow, that exists, I suppose.
Dustin, I wanted to talk to you briefly about arcs of this show, of
arcs.
this podcast we're in right now.
Let's talk about it.
I feel that we are in arc 2 now.
Yeah, because the first 2 episodes take place in the 1930s and are kind of their own thing. That kind of stems over to this one.
No.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about arc 2 of telling the tale.
Oh, arc 2 of telling the tale.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the season. Okay, interesting.
I will never talk about the game.
I will never talk about Back to the Future.
I feel like arc 1 was spiritual successor to LucasArts. That was the arc 1 of this show.
Okay.
And during that, we got to talk about Sam and Max, some of the branching out they did with Bone and Strong Bad's Cool Game for Attractive People. We'll call the first CSI game part of that. This arc 2, I'm thinking of calling The Road to the Walking Dead.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, this is
like
what arc
that.
2 is all about. It's a transition away from being a spiritual successor to LucasArts.
Okay.
And a transition to this new kind of game that's coming out. And it's going to have Back to the Future, the game in it. It's going to have Jurassic Park in it. It's going to have The Walking Dead Season 1 in it.
Wow.
It should probably have Poker Night at the Inventory.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
And it's absolutely going to have another CSI game in it.
Oh, boy.
At some
I can't
point.
wait.
Yeah, I've outlined arcs for the show. This is my way of telling you that.
Your way of breaking the news to me.
Yeah. Arc 3, after Arc 2, is going to be Potent Pickups, at which point we'll go back throughout the whole history of Telltale games and pick up some of the important other series that we haven't gone through. Like Wallace and Gromit, Tales of Monkey Island.
That's the one I can't wait to get to. That's
The
my
Wolf
bread and
Among
butter.
Us Part 1.
Ooh.
Other seasons of The Walking Dead, and of course, more CSI.
We
And-
just can't get away from it.
And Arc 4 is what I'm currently calling the Dirge.
Ooh.
The Dirge is going to be about the end of Telltale, including things that were just right at the end, sort of telling the story about their the end of their lifespan, talking about the last couple seasons of The Walking Dead, talking about seasons 1 and maybe 2 of Minecraft.
Yeah, we'd like to do season 2, but it's a little harder than
Yeah.
most other things.
And, of course, Batman. The 2 Batman seasons. Those are part of the Dirge. That's the end of going to be the end of our show.
We're saving Batman for last?
No, I think Walking Dead final season is going to be last.
Okay, that works.
Just because that one was actually on the cusp of them.
Yeah, that was literally
They were halfway
them
through it
being
when.
dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm down for that. That's a good way to divide up this podcast.
Well, we've got, and then one more after that, Arc 5, which is New Telltale, where we've
Ooh.
got Wolf Among Us 2 and The Expanse.
That's 2 whole games right there.
Yeah, that's probably going to be the shortest. Well, I don't know. Maybe New Telltale goes on forever and makes 1,000,000 games.
That's true. Actually, there's a question for you. What if we stop this podcast before new games come out? Would we come back to this podcast every time a new Telltale game comes out?
It depends. I think in 10 years, America might be underground and we all just sort of live on crust.
That's true. I mean, you've seen what happens in this episode of Back to the Future. Who knows where we'll be?
Yeah. So, if we all have the same number of fingers and teeth, then sure, we could continue doing the podcast. If not, who's to say?
Yeah, them's the breaks.
Yeah, we might be 50 years old.
Maybe. Hopefully we get there.
I mean, if you're looking for the gap between Banjo-Tooie and the next 3D platforming Banjo game, it's over 20 years now. So
yeah.
If you're talking about the gap between any one entry in a video game series and the next, it could be also over 20 years. You have to be ready for that possibility.
That's true.
We could be 50 years old.
We could be grandpas talking about, oh, Telltale did a new one.
I can't use that with that.
I can't shoot Max.
Back to the Future, the game, Episode 3, Citizen Brown. Let's actually talk about it.
Yeah, I guess it's about time. Hey.
Yeah. That was Episode 1, Dustin, you silly goose.
I'm just being a silly.
So, you crash your car in the 1980s in a billboard in the sky, and your girlfriend's down there, and man, she's not happy with you.
We've all been there.
We've all been there. This character is visually unidentifiable. You would never have guessed who this is supposed to be. The face is not the same face. The aesthetic is not the same aesthetic. That part is on purpose because it's an alternate 1986. But this is Jennifer.
Yeah.
From movies.
So Adam, my roommate Adam, who we bring up every now and then, was watching me play this, and he did look it up. She is played by the actress who plays her in, at least in, 2. I forget, was she in 3?
Yeah.
It's been a long time. Okay. Yeah.
The character was in all 3 of them, but that actress
different
was
actress in 2 and 3. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she is portrayed by her actress, which is cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. I don't know how famous she was or is. I don't recognize her from other things.
Yeah.
But that's very cool they were able to get her.
Yeah. I like when they can get them. I don't know to what extent. I only know a few characters are voiced by their regular movie actors. Christopher Lloyd, of course. Biff in the special edition. I don't know to what extent other characters are. But it sounds like they got them where they could.
Well, they clearly didn't get Crispin Glover.
Yeah.
For good reason.
Yeah.
And Marty McFly is not Michael J. Fox. But yeah, I think if there's anything that this series is really relying on, it's legitimacy and authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Just how much it feels like a very legitimate... Everyone's on board. All the people that really matter in terms of creative authority continuity are on board with this game. It feels like the movies.
Yeah.
And just like the movies, you go back to, just like movie number 2, you go back to 1980 or the mid 1980s, and it's just not the same. You did something in the past, you messed it up.
Way to go, Marty.
Way to go, Bart. It turns out the way you messed it up this time was Doc Brown in 1931 was supposed to go see Frankenstein in the theaters. And that was supposed to compound on top of his love of Jules Verne's fiction to inspire him to become a scientist and really drive into that passion and push it further than anyone else, I guess, ever had done.
Right.
But because of the context in which you saved the day in 1931, Doc Brown ends up marrying Edna Strickland.
Oh, a fate worse than death.
So we were we were kind of talking about this last episode about why the future would be different, and I think we did touch on the correct answer, which is Edna Strickland used her influence over her now husband Emmett Brown to convince him to use his scientific advancements for the monitoring of people and enforcement of certain moral things that she considers important.
Yeah, she put him down the wrong path.
Yeah. He's still doing science, clearly. He's still making inventions and things. But it's all for a very specific purpose of making this police state-like town out of Hill Valley. There's cameras everywhere. Gum isn't allowed. Dogs aren't allowed. You can't wear certain clothes on certain days.
Yeah, it's Hawaiian Shirt Friday.
Yeah, Hawaiian Shirt Friday is coming up, so they're keeping it fun. But if you don't like Hawaiian Shirt Friday, the consequences seem to be drastic.
Well, maybe not, because Marty never really, people are just kind of like, you're not wearing your polo,
Well, he was about to get into big trouble. But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
So you're stuck in the car because you crashed it into the billboard. And you're talking to Jennifer, who's down there on the street picking up trash for community service. And you're like, "Hey, Jennifer, can you get me out of the car?" And she's like, "Actually, Marty McFly, you're the biggest nerd I've ever seen in my life.
You stupid doofus.
You stupid doofus.
You
have
absolute sack.
You don't go around skateboarding. You go around studying. And you don't play the guitar. You play the ukulele and things that I've decided are not cool."
My pocket protector.
Yeah, I feel a little bit unsettled about the implications of the ukulele being a very nerdy instrument. I don't know about that. There's worse picks out there.
I'd say the ukulele's come really into fashion within the last decade or so.
Yeah, especially at your apartment.
Yeah, that's true. I know a thing or two about how popular it is.
Yeah. I don't know. They could have done. What could they have done? Dulcimer? Is the dulcimer a nerdy instrument?
I would think so. That's a weird name.
Bagpipes?
Bagpipes would have been the one.
Yeah.
I think. And it's weird because I feel like anyone who looks at this version of Marty would not say, "Oh, this guy's a total nerd sack," because Marty still has the cool guy look going on.
He's wearing that life protector.
That's cool.
Yeah, depending on what era he's in, everyone has words about that.
Yeah, I guess maybe in this universe, maybe he just looks the exact same, but he just does the really nerdy stuff they say he does. They call him the president of the Junior Brown Scouts or whatever.
Yeah, he's like a mathlete, and he does all that kind of stuff, and he's like a moral authority within the town. And apparently he and Jennifer did go on a couple dates, but this Jennifer's a super rebel chick who is graffitiing all over the town and just doing all the rebellious teenage stuff teenagers do. And Marty, apparently, this universe is Marty, told her that "Oh, you're going down the wrong path. You're a bad influence on me." And she got rightfully
Jennifer.
pretty mad about that.
Yeah. It's weird that she would even go out with him at all if he's like that in this universe. But she does, at one point she does say, "Sure, you're kinda cute." So maybe she wanted to just give him a chance to prove he's not so square, and it didn't work out.
Yeah, but with with everything that people are saying Marty did in the past, It's very clear. uh, you shouldn't have even been talking to this guy. This guy sucks.
Yeah,
This guy's the worst.
this guy, it does not match. And like, I feel like at least around the rest of the town, Marty is kind of considered like, he's considered a pretty good citizen, but not to these nonconformists.
Yeah, that's true. So eventually, you convince Jennifer to give you a tire iron and that you can use to break the windows of the DeLorean and jump out of the car. And then you realize that you're outside the gates of the town, and the gates are tall and thick and exist, which is different.
Just the way I like them.
Yeah, I love my gates extant. And
I like my gates tall, thick, and existing.
he can't get through it. It seems like the boundaries of the town are a lot less permeable than before. And you do some puzzles to get in there. And once you get in there, it's very depressing. It's Hill Valley on 1984 mode, where no one's having any sort of fun or hanging out or doing anything or even eating food.
Let me correct you on that one, Mitch. It's actually 1986.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Also, last episode, I guessed that the name Citizen Brown was a reference to the movie Citizen Kane. It is not.
Not in any way.
No, it's not related to Citizen Kane. It is, however, very related to A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
In the way that Biff has been rehabilitated, we'll say. This universe's version of Biff is similar to all versions of Biff. A bad guy who's sort of a bully. He roughhouses. He breaks all the rules. But in this Hill Valley, they really go hard on him for that. And they invent something called the Citizen Plus program that is supposed to rehabilitate and educate members of society that are not pulling their weight, like Biff. And by doing that, they're just brainwashing him. They just completely brainwash Biff to the point where if he even thinks about doing something that's against Edna's rules, he'll become so sick that he throws up.
I feel bad for Biff in this episode. What they said he was doing is really not that bad. It's not like he was the total asshole he was before. He was just saying, no, I like drinking. I like looking at girly mags. I like dogs.
Yeah, existing with dogs is one of the worst crimes.
I guess that's true. You've seen what dogs can lead to.
Have you seen A Clockwork Orange?
No, I want to sometime though. It gets referenced all the time, and it's on HBO Max, and anytime I scroll by it, I think I should sit down and give that a shot.
I watched it for the first time on HBO Max a couple months ago.
Wow, how did you like it?
I thought it was hard to watch, but also it was like I see why people reference it all the time.
Okay. That said nothing about its quality.
It's a very well made movie.
But it's like you said, it's just hard.
It's hard to watch. It's a Kubrick movie. There's a lot of audience friction in there by design. So I can't say it was a good time, but I do recommend it.
Awesome. I'll give it a shot sometime.
But the idea of brainwashing the public to become physically ill when they even contemplate doing something they're not supposed to do is straight out of A Clockwork Orange.
Right.
That's the plot of the movie, at least halfway through. And Biff is trying to sell this thing that happened to him as a good thing that everyone else should go and do.
Mm-hmm.
And
sign up for Citizen
pretty depressing.
Plus.
I agree. I feel bad for Biff here.
Yeah, like he seems like he even has a line in this episode. He says, "I don't need to be happy. I'm content."
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, good for you, Biff, I guess. anyway, from Biff, you found out that like the three big things that get you a lot of demerits, and you can get demerits for basically anything. There's other things in the game that you can get demerits for, but they're not enough. Are public displays of affection, having dogs, and what's the other one? Possessing contraband of any kind. And in this case,
as alcohol.
Yeah. You meet up with your mom, who in this universe has a drinking problem. This has not been observed in other universes so far in the series, but Marty McFly's mom, Lorraine McFly, does have a drinking problem in alt 1986.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to steal her booze, plant it on yourself, and then get caught in order to get demerits.
I guess it's better you than her.
I guess. I don't know. It's bad for us.
Yeah. Well, it gets us what we want in this episode.
Yeah, that's true. And you're talking with your dad, and your dad is like monitoring her all the time and watching her and saying like, "Hey, can you like talk to her and get her to admit that she's drinking?" And your dad sucks in this universe.
Yeah. He's not great.
He's the worst. He's like a full... He's going even further than being a narc, because he's trying to like get people to admit to it that weren't even going to be a problem.
Yeah, and like he when talking to your mom, you're kind of talking about, she's thinking about maybe signing up for the Citizen Plus program, which is not good. And I feel like this probably would have pushed someone over the edge. Because remember, Biff was forced to do this. Like he didn't choose to. I feel like if George narked on her to the higher ups, she probably would have been forced to do the same.
Yeah, probably. Just drinking is probably not as bad as what Biff was doing, so it might not have been as extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a really depressing thought.
It's not great.
Dogs, that one's easy. You find Einstein around. He's in this universe. He was ejected from the DeLorean somehow when it came back to 1986. And you can get him around Edna, who is old now, again. And by doing that, you can get her to give you demerits for that. And public displays of affection is probably the most difficult one. You need to get Jennifer back in love with you, which is difficult because she thinks you suck, and she also, in some different ways, sucks a little bit too. And she's dating... What's this guy's name? I didn't write it down.
Was
Leach?
It like Leach?
Yeah.
Is he from one of the movies?
I don't believe so.
He's just new. I don't think he's come up before now, but they treat him like you're supposed to know him.
Yeah, he might have been one of like Biff's guys, Biff's ensemble. But that doesn't make sense because Biff's an adult in this time period.
Yeah.
Maybe Leach is... I don't think they would give Biff a son that we don't know about, right?
I don't think so, and they didn't really... That is interesting that you say that, though, because there was a character cut from this that would have been, I believe, Biff's daughter, Tiff Tannen, who was kind of like Jennifer here. She was a punk-ass rebel spawn of the Tannens.
Punk-ass rebel.
But she was cut from this, but she is still in the comic based on this.
Interesting. From like this episode 3? Or just
I guess,
the story at some point?
I guess it was just a comic. Yeah, she was cut from this specific episode 3.
Okay.
There's a couple cut characters. I'll get into the other one a little later.
Neat. But you need to challenge Leach to a guitar off where you don't play guitar very well at all, and it's more about dancing in a way that makes the other person mimic you, but if they do the moves you do, they fall into a garbage can. Which is...
Those are the
nice.
rules.
Those are the rules. If you fall into garbage, you lose the guitar off.
Yeah, sorry, I don't make the rules. That's just how it's been.
Upon winning the guitar off, Jennifer breaks up with her boyfriend to be with you.
That's all it took.
Yeah, and Marty is feeling good about that. Marty, I don't know if I'd feel good about that.
I think I would. This guy sucked. He wasn't cool.
Yeah, but now you're dating someone who flies at the whim of whoever wins at a guitar off.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
And respects cheating at said guitar off.
Well, here's the thing. Remember, they had already dated. They had already been dating, so I wonder if she was just looking for an excuse to not think Marty was such a shithead.
Okay.
So she probably still had some sort of feelings for him, but was like, I can't be with such a loser.
That's fair.
But then you proved, no, I'm not a loser. I got cool guitar. I don't fall into garbage.
I don't even fall into garbage a little bit.
This guy fell in a lot. I don't even a little.
While you're doing all this stuff, you can go home and talk to your dad, who's in the garage, and he's got all these monitors where he's hacking into all of the cameras around town, but not for nefarious purposes or even to be cool. He's doing it to make a promotional video for Citizen Brown and for Hill Valley.
Right.
And the way he's just like watching everyone doing things and giving people demerits when he can see them doing bad stuff is pretty gross.
He's a peeping Tom.
Yeah, I'll go out of order here, and I'll tell you my unweekly guy right now. It's George McFly.
Yep, I did too. As soon as, even just from this part, I was like, well, here's our unweekly guy for the week.
Yeah, Crispin Glover smelled this episode of a video game 30 years later coming, and that's why he's not in Back to the Future 2 or 3.
He was like, whoa, no thank you. I did not like the way they handled him in Back to the Future video game.
Yeah, he's got his eye on the prize, and the prize is 2011 video games that he couldn't possibly predict in the same year that the NES Metroid came out.
He took one look at Metroid and said, this is a bad omen.
Yeah, I see how this is going for me. Yeah, so you talk to your dad, and he's just gross, and I don't like it.
Can I just say, I gotta be honest, I didn't really like any of these puzzles. I felt like I felt like
I didn't.
I felt like the clues they kind of give you for what you're supposed to do don't really... This might have just been on me. Maybe I was just not in a right headspace for it. But I felt like what they were trying to hint at me doing was not the way you would do these. Like, here, you see on the monitors, George is watching his wife. I thought the monitors had something to do with getting her to give you the flask. But no, you don't do that at all. You just have to move the statue and spin it to block his camera. I was like, oh, okay. Well, because a lot of his monitors have camera, they show like that part, that area she's in. So I saw that and I was like, obviously the solution's got to be there. But no, it definitely was not.
I didn't have that particular trouble, but I do think there's a lot of stuff in this episode that it's asking you to think exactly like the designer's thinking, and if you don't, it just doesn't work out. Yeah.
I know we're talking about this episode, not necessarily our feelings on it just yet, but I just want to say I don't think this series is super gelling with me so far. Well, I don't think it's
let's get into our feelings on it, because I think that's interesting. Tell me more.
There's just something about it where like I don't necessarily think it's bad or anything. Obviously, it's nowhere near like CSI levels. But I really just am not like that interested. Even going into this episode last week, I thought, oh yeah, this is where the story is going to get really interesting and really cool. But I didn't even really feel that with this episode that much. You're still in Hill Valley. It's like a different version of Hill Valley, but it's still the same areas you've been in. Just like a different timeline, but it doesn't feel like that interesting. You just have like the same people walking around in polo shirts. You go back to the McFly residence. I guess that's really it for this episode. You go in the alley again. There's the alley, there's the town, there's the McFly house. You really do not go anywhere different in this episode.
Yeah, the locations I will say are pretty limited in this series.
Yeah.
Much more so than Sam and Max. Like Sam and Max is built around the street the same way that this game is built around Hill Valley, like square.
I would say more so even because you don't even really leave this square that much. At least in Sam and Max, you're going into like wildly different locations every episode.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and I also like going into this episode. I thought, oh, this is going to be this super crazy. They can do a lot with this kind of dystopian future thing with Dr. Brown. But honestly, I feel like they don't push it that far. Like you get what they're going for, but there's barely anyone around. It doesn't look like incredibly crazily different. I feel like they really could have pushed this a lot farther than they ended up doing. Like really go dystopian. Like, oh shit, we really fucked up. Here it's like, yeah, it's not a good future, but it's like, okay, so I'll get a demerit for chewing gum. Like Jennifer's spray painting a building, obviously, like you can still do stuff, and it's just here. I kind of got the impression that Doc was gonna like rule the world in this future, and this is probably on me just for getting my hopes up, rather than what the episode ended up being. But I don't know. I just don't feel like it's really going anywhere super interesting. I feel like this episode is probably the most interesting of them so far, but even then, I'm just thinking. I feel like they could have really pushed it farther than they did, and maybe they do later. But we're 3 episodes in. I just feel like I'm not that. It just hasn't grabbed me that much, and I'm still enjoying my time with it. But maybe it's just since we just played Sam and Max season 3, which really goes to crazy places and is pushing what they're doing with the series. But this just feels... I don't want to necessarily say it's safe, because I don't think making quote-unquote Back to the Future 4 is a safe thing to do. But I don't know, it's just not... It's not wowing me, and I want to be wowed by this. This whole time I'm playing it, I'm like, I wish I was enjoying this more than I am.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, sorry, that I talked a lot.
No, it's fine. I feel similar in some ways.
Okay.
Not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I will say I do think this is my favorite episode of the season so far.
Yeah, I did say I think it's probably the most interesting one. I just think for the potential of what I was kind of visualizing it was going to be, it didn't really hit that, and that is probably on me rather than the game itself, but, you know.
We'll get to how this episode ends and how it progresses after you get the demerits. Because the demerits are only like the first half of the episode.
Yeah.
But I think from this point on, I actually know how the rest of the season is going to go.
Okay.
At least broad strokes.
I can kind of get a general idea.
Yeah. I think that well, I don't want to guess before we're talking about this stuff. I don't want to go too out of order here. But... that's interesting because that versus last episode, when last episode ended, I thought like, oh, this can go anywhere, and we're still 3 episodes out from the end, so we can go to so many different time periods, and I no longer feel that we're going to do that.
Yeah, we're gonna stay here in Hill Valley. I get the impression that we're probably going to be going back to a time period we already had been.
Yeah, I think that well, I'll just say it. We're going to go back to 1931 probably. For a third time. And I think that the way this series, in addition to the movies, sort of goes back to the same time multiple times in order to thread the needle through certain events and cross over with yourself crossing over onto the past is cool and is maybe the whole appeal of the series. So I'm not against that. I do think going back to 1931 is probably a good move, but it does make the series feel smaller than what it could have been. It doesn't feel like the big sort of epics that the movies are.
Mm-hmm.
It feels much more like an epilogue than 4.
Yeah, it
And
feels like a smaller story in the Back to the Future canon.
right, yeah, it does. Um, I do like. I will say I like how much 1931 is getting developed. You don't go there in this episode. You only go to alt 1986 in this episode. But just really fleshing out that world and that cast of characters maybe makes it on the way to feeling how 1885 or 2015 felt in the movies. I don't think it's got anywhere near enough power to feel like how the movies felt in 1955 or 1985,
Mm-hmm.
but it's approaching those other like tertiary time periods from the movies
Yeah,
pretty quickly. I like
and
that about it, but I
yeah,
totally see what you mean as well. There is, I guess it's just like a big why. Like you've got all these people involved to do something very difficult to do. And you seem to actually be nailing making it feel like Back to the Future. It doesn't feel wrong. It doesn't feel illegitimate.
yeah,
And like, why are we going through this story though? Like, why is this better than leaving the story at the end of Back to the Future Part 3, where Doc has a family on a time traveling train and just leaves?
yeah,
Um,
exactly. And like, I don't want to sound like I'm absolutely dreading this game because I do like it. I wish I liked it more.
I always wish I like everything more, but I see what you mean. Um, yeah, I don't think it's worse than leaving the series on the end of Back to the Future Part 3. I
Yeah,
don't think it's making it worse or anything, which it easily could have. But I'm not sure yet why this is better.
yeah,
Exploring Doc's entire life, I guess, is I think the motivation here of seeing him when he's young, seeing a relationship he could have had, seeing an alternate version of Doc, because the movies didn't really focus on Doc that much. They focused on the McFlys
mm-hmm.
and Biff. So putting the spotlight on Doc's life sort of answers a lot of questions there, and I can see why that is exciting.
Yeah,
But I'm just not sure it's landing in the way that I would have liked it to.
yeah. There's just little things where I'm like, this could have probably been more enjoyable, or this could have been done better. But I'm still glad it exists.
Yeah. I will say though, the point about the demerits not meaning anything, I do disagree with. Because if you get enough demerits, you get sent to Citizen Brown. That's the next part of the
Mm-hmm.
story. You get sent to Citizen Brown, and he interviews you like a psychological examination, and you get to meet him. He has no memory of the adventures you went on. This is a completely alternate universe Doc Brown,
Yeah, I
who,
will say I think this part of the episode is very interesting.
yeah,
I think it's neat that like Marty's always had Doc be there to bail him out of these situations. He's always had, even if it was like 1950s Doc, it was more or less the same Doc who was like there to help him get out of these crazy scenarios. Here Doc isn't here to Doc's more of an antagonist in this timeline. And so
yeah.
Marty kind of needs to figure things out himself. That I thought was an interesting way to go about it.
Through this conversation, it's revealed that Doc Brown, or not Doc, Citizen Brown, feels that everything he's done for the community is actually genuinely good. He seems to have good intentions, and any discontent among the citizens of Hill Valley has seemingly been shielded from him. He doesn't think anyone doesn't like it. He thinks he's doing a good thing for everyone.
Yeah,
Um,
he thinks he's the savior the world needs.
yeah. And from this, it's revealed that Edna has been the one delaying Citizen Brown from seeing the tapes that would have revealed people talking about how much they hate this town. Um, like, everyone hates it, and he doesn't know that. And
Mhm.
you telling him that just breaks his mind.
He gets real sad.
Yeah. You also prove to him by telling him things only 1931 Emmett Brown would know, and also when Citizen Brown shows you a picture of him in 1931, you're in the background of it.
That's creepy. Imagine seeing that.
Yeah, and that
imagine
one...
having a photo and having someone be like, "Look, that's me in that photo," and you're like, "Oh!"
That one pretty much breaks him. That one, he can't handle it. So after that point, he just says, "Okay, leave." And I think if he didn't say that, he would have immediately started you on Citizen Plus, which we learn from this next segment is not just brainwashing; it's complete brain control. We find that your dad's tapes that he's recorded from the monitors that expresses everyone's discontent have been stolen and his equipment's been ruined. So you got to find the tapes.
Yeah,
and
I love part of this scene, and I'll let you explain before I say what part I love.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
So we find out through the monitors, since he's recording so much footage, he has a camera recording his location. So you can look back and see who it is who hit him with the bat and knocked him out. It turns out it was Biff.
Yeah.
And my favorite part is that he, like, gently taps George with the bat and he just goes down. He, like, goes doink, and that's it.
It's not even, like, the tip of the bat. It's right next to his hand where he's holding it. So it just... He sort of bunts George McFly.
Just enough to knock out a wimp like George.
Yeah. And you can tell once you meet up with Biff, even though you just saw him on the tapes doing it, he actually has no memory of doing this. His watch completely controls him. Edna has remote control over Biff, which makes me feel like the demerits are actually a pretty bad thing to have. If you have the demerits, you might be on your way to becoming Citizen Plus, where your complete bodily agency could be removed from you with a remote control attached to your watch.
That's true. I guess Jennifer just gets away with the shit she does because she's the police chief's daughter, and
yeah, her dad's a cop, so she can just do all that stuff and not have to worry about it. She's a little privileged. Yeah. We'll say that.
Let's be honest here.
So you find the tapes. They've been put down this decycling hole, which is just a garbage can. I don't know why they were like, what's a decycling hole?
It's not like it totally, like, breaks up what they're made of.
No, it's just a place to go.
Yeah, you can call that a chute, or garbage can.
Yeah. All of the contraband, all the porn and the cigarettes and booze and I guess dogs are thrown down the decycling chute, and you realize that is where Biff put the tapes. So you go down there, and then there's a boss fight down there where it's revealed that Edna has been controlling Biff. And she's been the one behind everything, which is like, yeah, of course.
I don't really like this part either. I don't think
you don't like this part.
Well, I kind of like. I think it's funny making Biff give in to his vices, but the part where Biff attacks you feels a little forced to me. Like, you helped him out.
Yeah. Do you want to explain the getting him into his vices situation?
So Edna commands our good friend Biff to take out the trash, which is you. But all surrounding them are all of the vices that got Biff in trouble in the first place. You kind of got to try to snap him out of it by being like, "Hey, Biff, look, there's porn over there."
Yeah.
and he'll be like, "What?" And you can be like, "Hey, Biff, look, there's a dog." He'll be like, "I love dogs." So yeah, it's beer, porn, and dogs. But also you have to bring his attention to the license plates to say like, "Hey, is that the license plate to your car?" And that's what really snaps him out of it. I don't know how I feel about that because that wasn't brought up in the episode. Was it?
I think it was. That's why your mom is driving a golf cart and everyone drives golf carts. There's no fast cars in the town.
Yeah, but I mean, earlier when they're talking about the things that got Biff into Citizen Plus, it was just the alcohol, the girly mags, and the dogs.
Yeah, but I suppose his car was taken away with everyone else's car.
Yeah, I get that. I get the reasoning for it. I just feel like, especially when there's so much other stuff in the room that doesn't help. There's like candy and video games. You're like, hey, there's Wild Gunman. No, I guess that didn't work. But but the license plates do work, even though that wasn't brought up as part of his whole thing when all the other ones are. That part it's like fine. It just feels slightly sloppy to me.
Yeah, I guess they're pulling on the fact that Biff has always been a car guy. It's sort of in the background, but in 1985, in the modern setting of the movies, Biff is a car mechanic. Like, that's his job.
I just feel like maybe they should have had Biff say something like, "Oh, they even took my car away. Can you believe it?" And then you would have known, like, okay.
Did they not? Did they definitely not?
I don't want to say I don't remember him ever saying it, but I'm going to be totally honest. This episode has a lot of dialogue. Like, to the point that I was getting a little, like, fed up with it. Like, especially when you talk to your mom or your dad, you have so many choices to be like, oh, what about this guy? Tell me what's up with this person. There's, like, so much dialogue there. And every time I'm like, oh, well, I guess I better go through them I might need something in these dialogue trees. I feel like they laid it on a little thick
That's true.
with this episode. And normally I love dialogue. That's my favorite part, is hearing characters say fun stuff. But this time I was kind of like, all right, just let me progress.
So after this fight with Biff, you get free, and it looks like it's not going to stick for very long. But then Citizen Brown enters the room and says, "Hey, Edna, did you really do all that stuff? That's like a little shitty, girl.
That's not cool.
You should maybe have considered not doing that."
Yeah, I would have maybe thought twice and then picked the second one instead.
So she sort of sulks away, and she was like, "Didn't you want this?" And he's like, "No,
no,
not like at all." And she seems sad, but now you've got him on your side. So you and Citizen Brown, and you get Einstein out of the kennel, and Einstein are gonna go presumably fix the DeLorean, and that is it. There's like another fight with Biff after that once he comes to, and he just gets mad at you. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's nothing really to write home about. You just got to get him in a spot and then use the panic button from the back of the thing.
Yeah. I don't know if that's
we find
audio-friendly description, but yes.
you
know, the back of the thing.
You just press the panic button from the back of the thing, you know. But then you find out that Doc didn't get very far, and Edna is sitting in his chair. She's kind of assumed direct control, and she's like, oh, he's being taken care of.
Yeah. So that's the episode. It ends right there. And it gives you a little sneak peek of the next episode, which is called Double Visions. And yeah. So what we were saying earlier is that we can pretty much predict how the series will go. I think this next episode, Double Visions, is going to be all about making the DeLorean work again with Emmett Brown, and trying to go back to the past. Maybe you do go all the way back to 1931 in the next episode, and then at some point you will go to the future again, and it'll be all right except for one last thing, and it's a boss battle, and then you do that and it's fine. And that's going to be how the series ends.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I can't see it ending other ways.
This episode is so weird to think about, because I do think this is the best one so far in this season, but I just feel like all my little problems with it are really kind of more apparent, or kind of coming up to the surface a little more. So I'm more frustrated with it than the other two, even though I think it's the best one so far.
I may say episode 2 is the best one. I liked going back to 1931 the second time and seeing how we changed things and how
Yeah.
that was important. And I liked going in the speakeasy. That was my favorite location so far.
Yeah, that was neat. I like
Um,
that. And then
yeah,
this episode, I just feel like it doesn't really hit the highs that I was hoping it would. Like the stakes are high, don't get me wrong, but I was going in thinking he was gonna like already rule the world, not just Hill Valley.
hmm,
And that's kind of the sinister plan. Is it seems like they're gonna branch out and do Citizen Plus around the world rather than, or at least across the country, and then presumably across the world. But yeah, I mean, it's so I my thoughts are so contradictory in this episode because it's like it is interesting, but just not interesting enough. I feel like.
sure. I guess my hope is for next episode to do to alt 1986 the same thing that episode 2 did to 1931 and
Mm-hmm.
expand on it a little bit further and show how your actions in this universe already have caused effects and you work on those. um I don't know how much of the next episode is going to be in 1986 still, but I hope it's more to really explore this sort of dystopian Hill Valley further.
Yeah,
I think that could
I'd
be
I'd much
useful.
rather that than going back to 1931 again,
Well, I think you're
which
probably going to do both, but
yeah,
the ratio of which one to which one could be it could be something that makes or breaks the episode.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll say at this point that there's still room for the ending of this thing to be very interesting.
definitely.
I just don't see how yet, and I do feel like I see how it will end. So that's not. I guess I'm not optimistic, but I am not having a bad time with these. These feel
No,
very. These feel a little bit like Telltale junk food.
yeah, like I said before, I'm still enjoying them enough.
Yeah.
I just kind of I remember people saying it was like really good, and I'm not really getting that. And maybe it picks up, or maybe I'm just inflating people's opinions on it from back in the
Hmm.
day. Maybe even at the time, people were just like, "Yeah, I mean, it's fine."
Yeah. I I just think I don't understand why it's not really hitting the same notes as Sam and Max. I mean, for one, it's just
Yeah.
a different project than Sam and Max, so it can't be expected to be as good
Mm-hmm.
or better or whatever. But it is the thing that these Universal games, Back to the Future and Jurassic Park, are the things that Telltale turned their major focus to after their focus was mostly on Sam and Max, Strong Bad, and Monkey Island.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just wondering why isn't it at least that level
Yeah.
in
It
terms of
it's
writing strength? But I don't know. Maybe that's unfair. I
writing strength, and I just feel like they're not. Maybe they're just not allowed to push it as far as they could. Something as like Sam and Max, because like with Sam and Max, you go to hell, you go to Santa's workshop. Here, we're in the same location for all of these in different time periods, but I'll be honest, I don't feel like they're. I mean, they're obviously different. Obviously, 1931 feels different than like this timeline, 1986. But I don't think it's like by that much, and I feel like it really should have. It feels like they're kind of afraid to go to really push what they can do with these ideas. Is how it feels to me.
you know what I think they're coming up against.
Hmm.
Hill Valley is in California, and California is just not that old.
Hmm.
So you can't do, like, if you had a London set Back to the Future series, you could go to a different century every episode for like 15 episodes,
Hmm.
and each one could still be interesting, or like Rome or something like that, Tokyo. And in Back to the Future, you're in Hill Valley. the gold rush was in like the 1850s, and 1885 is when they say Hill Valley was established. So at that point, like, you're not going to go back any further than that. And that kind of limits your time periods, especially considering that you're saying modern day is 1985. So you really only have 100 years to play around with in this time traveling series. And you already did the 50s, and you already did modern day. You already did like an alt future, and you already did the very beginning. So this sort of middle ground between the very beginning and the 50s with the 30s is, I guess, the last place to go. I don't know where you would go after that. You would maybe just go to the future again, but like this time it's like a correct future, which is boring compared to what they did before.
I guess it's just because like Back to the Future, despite its sci-fi ideas, is more grounded in reality. You can't just have like Marty and Doc go to hell and meet Satan or whatever. You kind of gotta stay within the lines a little bit. But I just feel like if you're gonna do like a dystopian future, you can really push that idea, and they didn't. And I wonder if part of it is because maybe since it is this big famous IP, maybe they just weren't allowed to get that crazy and creative with it.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Like maybe Universal was like, whoa, no, you can't have Doc Brown like rule the world and enslave everybody and et cetera, et cetera. But you can have him, be a little power hungry here in Hill Valley in 1986.
Well, they did invent the character of Edna Strickland for this. Yeah. And she's connected to Vice Principal Strickland from the movies. Yeah. And
so they had a little bit of wiggle room, I guess.
Yeah, I like Edna, is what I'll say. As a villain, I have it written in my notes. Edna is a pretty good villain. Thanks, notes.
Thanks.
I remember that now. Yeah, I like her as a villain. She feels really gross, and she's cooperative enough back in 1931 to feel sort of friendly.
Yeah, she feels like someone who's like realistic. It feels like someone who could exist, but then circumstances kind of made her views go out of control over the years.
Yeah, and there's like these little hints back in 1931 of like, oh, you're maybe not a good person. Like altogether, you're a bad person. That just come out very subtly, and I like that. And there's stuff like that makes the series feel pretty interesting as a choice, but I'm still wondering, like, okay, when is the reason that this is what they decided to do with this video game going to make sense? Yeah, and I hope and maybe next episode.
We still have 2 episodes left. Maybe they really stick the landing.
Maybe they do. Yeah, I hope so.
One more thing I'm going to rag on this game for. I hate to sound like a negative Nelly.
Okay.
So recently, like within the last week, the Season 2 remaster of Sam & Max came out.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to, replay it all again, especially when I'm already playing this. But I did toy around with it a little bit. And I really like just how smooth it felt to control and like to select everything. And then going back to this, it felt very, very not as good. Like,
what interface are you using for controls?
So since I'm playing on the Xbox, I'm just playing on the Xbox One. It's I'm just using the control stick to move around, but it does this weird thing where if you're moving in a direction, but then it changes camera angles, you'll keep going in that direction rather than the direction you would think would make sense in that scene.
Right.
Like, if you hold left and you're, like, moving left, but then the camera changes to behind you, you'll keep moving in that direction rather than moving left in that scene, and that kind of throws me off, and I'm like, whoa, wait, that's not... I shouldn't be moving like that. But the big thing for me is it feels like it's really hard for you to, like... So you use the right stick to just latch onto a clickable item. But it feels like a lot of the time when I move the control stick to find or to move the cursor to the next item, it takes a lot of fiddling around to find like the exact item you want to hit. When you were trying to do those monitors, like switching between each monitor and each VCR, it was grueling with this. And I was just thinking like, boy, I don't know if they just really nailed it with those Sam and Max remasters, like just tweaked how it worked or whatever, but it felt a lot more elegant than this does. And that's a remaster of a game that came out long before Back to the Future. And I'm playing the remastered version of Back to the Future even. So it just felt like it kind of feels like the game's fighting you at times to do what you want.
Yeah, I think it's a little rough with that thing about going the same direction, even though the direction you're holding now would not make sense. I do actually think that's the right thing to do, because the alternative is as soon as you enter a new area, even though you're holding the same direction, you just suddenly start walking a different direction.
I definitely get that.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from. I don't know why, but every time it happens, it bothers me. Maybe it's just because that's not how I'm used to doing it with like Sam and Max or something, and it's just weirding me out. But I do get that that's probably what you'd rather, because you want to keep your character walking towards what you want him walking towards. But
yeah, but I get what you're saying, because even I'm using a mouse and keyboard, and they do seem a little more confused about movement than the Sam and Max games did. It feels like they're at this point in their development somehow afraid of just doing a point and click movement option.
Wouldn't that just work so much better?
Yeah.
But even in season 3 of Sam and Max, where they kind of changed up how you move your character, it still felt natural enough. I wasn't frustrated with it like I kind of am here. And when I say I'm frustrated, I mean just like barely. It's not, obviously it's not game breaking or anything. It's just kind of a thing where I'm like, come on. Come on, Marty.
Let's get into our segments.
Let's get into these segments. I'm sorry for ragging on this episode. I do think this is a good episode.
I like this side of you. It doesn't come out very often.
Yeah, I don't know why. It's just playing this, I was like, I want this to live up to its potential, and maybe it will. We'll see. I'm hopeful.
It's strange that this is what did it, because this is so much better than CSI. It's so much better than Bone.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I guess maybe it's just because my hopes were kind of higher for this.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I had heard, like, oh, Back to the Future, that's really good. And so, like, it wasn't like CSI or Bone where I was thinking, oh, well, Bone's kind of primitive. It was their first adventure games they were doing. Or CSI, that's, its whole thing.
Yeah, that's its whole deal is that it's bad. It was pitched that way.
Yeah, they said, look, we're going to make a game, but here's the twist. It's not going to be very good. But, yeah, I think that's why it's really coming out with this, is I was kind of led to believe that this was a really good Telltale game, and I'm just not really getting that, especially after The Devil's Playhouse. It's a totally fine Telltale game. I'm enjoying it fine. I feel like if I had played it before that, maybe I wouldn't be ragging on it as much as I am.
Huh.
But yeah, maybe I just had my hopes up too high, but it just feels it feels like a step back and a little standard to me.
Okay. Well, Dustin, what's your potent pickup?
My potent pickup. It was a little hard to decide, but I settled on the guitar.
Mine is Your Mom's Booze.
Oh, that's a good one. That would have been a good one too.
I just like that that's a thing that you can pick up and have.
I'm just going to carry around my mom's booze for a little bit.
Another one that I considered putting was the demerits, but specifically the demerits that you can get for just doing weird things around town. Did you get any of these?
Oh, can you get more demerits beyond just what you need? Oh,
yeah,
wow, interesting. Sure. Tell me more about this.
So if you're in the wrong place for too long, one of the monitors can look at you and say like, "Hey, you're loitering. Here's a demerit for loitering." And at one point, you can talk to the Jennifer's dad. And if you do the right, I think it's like a dialogue option thing, he'll give you a demerit for not wearing the right clothes on that day.
Oh, okay.
And then you have those in your inventory. And
even though you don't need them.
You don't need them, can't do anything with them.
That's interesting. I like things like that are just fun little bonus things.
Yeah, if you tap the statue that swirls around before you need to for the puzzle with your mom's booze, with your mom's booze, the nearby intercom thing will say, "Hey, don't touch this statue. Here's a
don't
demerit.
do that.
Don't do that. I don't like it when you do that." Yeah, so you get a demerit for that too.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I didn't know that. But you did remind me of something I wanted to bring up that I totally forgot. So, I have a friend who played through these a long time ago, and he's, read up on them and looked into them more than I have. But he told me, we already talked about the first cut character, who was TtT034, but there was apparently another one they were considering who they cut. They were originally going to give Doc Brown and Edna a son.
Huh.
They were originally going to have a kid, but they decided against it because they didn't like the idea of going back and totally rewriting him out of history.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, so I think they made the right choice.
Yeah, you would have had to, kidnap this kid, and then he never sees his mom again.
Yeah, he goes back in time and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna make it so your new son just was never born. See ya."
Yeah, he lives with Clara, and he's like, "Clara, you're not my real mom." And but yeah, he'd have a bad life.
Yeah, it would just be crazy for him.
Yeah, I guess
I don't know.
is a similar deal.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. I guess they decided to cut her for the exact same thing. That's a whole character that just would not exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That makes complete... I was just about to say, I don't know why they wrote TtT034 out, but it's exactly that same reason. That makes total sense. Good job, writers.
Yeah, you made a good call.
Yeah,
I guess the comic made a bad call, we're saying.
Whoops.
Oh, fun fact about the comic. They had to set it 3 months later in 1931 than they were going to, because they found out Frankenstein wasn't out at that time.
That's funny. I guess they made a good call on that one.
Yeah, I'm glad that they thought that was important enough to change, because that's fun.
Yeah, that's a little thing that it doesn't really affect the story either way. I would never have told you Frankenstein wasn't out by then, but I like that they decided, you know what? No, we need to be authentic.
Yeah, it was 1931, just the wrong time of year, I guess.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't affect it. Yeah, it doesn't affect anything, so that's good.
What's your golden moment, Dustin?
My golden moment was well, I was gonna say the rock off, but I think I'm just gonna say when you meet Doc in this episode. The interaction between Marty and Doc in this episode I thought was very interesting. Just seeing a totally different side of Doc. I think that's what makes this whole episode.
I have it exactly written down the same. The first conversation with Citizen Brown is my golden moment. It's a really good sort of dialogue standoff between the characters. Mm-hmm. You see a side of Marty you don't usually see as well then, who's genuinely really angry and frustrated at Doc Brown.
Yeah.
He usually idolizes him, and
but now this is a whole different Doc. He kind of has to bare his teeth a little.
Yeah, we still don't know why high school junior would be best friends with a disgraced nuclear physicist. We don't know why that's the case before Back to the Future Part 1. Mm-hmm. But we know at least the trials and tribulations they've been through so far. And yeah, they're good friends, and he's getting mad, and it is emotionally affecting, I think.
Something else I also really like is they know just how far to push Doc in this episode, or Citizen Brown. Because, I feel like if you did make him, it would have been so easy to take him into the reins of making him unlikable. And it's well, why would I want Marty to save this guy? rather than for his own benefit. But no, here, like, he's been misled. He's been kind of led down the wrong path, but he does genuinely think he's doing a good thing for everybody. You can tell Doc is still a good person deep down. And I think that was the right call.
I totally agree, and it makes sense contextually as well that you'd go this route and not push him further, because he's still based on the seed of Emmett Brown from 1931.
Yeah.
Who we've seen
exactly.
is not a bad person. It would be very strange if that person just became very, very bad over time.
Right. And it makes more sense to do that with Edna, where it's like, who cares? She can be evil. She can be the villain. Who cares? I like. Yes, go ahead.
No, finish your thing. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say I like that it's not necessary. I mean, I guess he was kind of the main villain of the last 2 episodes, but I like that it's building up to not be a Tannen that's like the main antagonist of this game. It seems like Edna is the one who's really going to be at the head of it all, and I like that. I think that shows that they are willing to stray a little bit, not totally stick within the tropes of Back to the Future. Like, you're having the Tannens there throughout the series, but now it's someone different in the big main villain chair.
I feel the same way, and I feel that you kind of have to do that, because by the end of the first 3 movies, and then especially after dealing with Kid Tannen in the 30s, you thoroughly embarrass the Tannens so much that you like, it would feel bad to take them down at this point as the main villain. They're so embarrassed.
Even if it was like Satan Tannen, you'd be like, oh geez, I know you're like the worst of the worst, but I've already just done so much to hurt you guys.
Yeah, like you'd see Hitler Tannen, and I'm like, I'm gonna pants that fool and throw him in some manure.
And you're like, come on, give him a break.
Yeah, stop with the whole Nazi thing, and just don't make me put you in the poop again.
Yeah, just warn him. Just point at him. Look, I'm gonna throw you in that big poo poo if you don't cut it out.
Now, Biff, I'm gonna throw you in the poo poo.
Can you imagine if this game was starring George McFly?
That would be great. I want that instead. Dustin, who's your weekly guy?
My weekly guy is Jennifer in this episode. I think
my weekly guy is also Jennifer.
She makes a very strong impression, but I also just feel like no one else really does.
Yeah,
I feel like
she's pretty
I guess
fun.
I could have said Doc Brown, but he doesn't really even do that much in this episode. And I think Jennifer makes a strong... She's like the farthest, aside from Doc Brown, for seeing like what's changed in this world.
You also make out with her at one point in the episode, which is a really weird vibe compared to everything we've seen in this podcast so far. Just like, imagine Sam or Max making out with someone in the middle of an episode.
He did. Sam made out with Girl Stinky.
Wait, when did that happen?
In Beyond the Alley of the Dolls. When they were...
I don't remember this.
What was the exact circumstances? I forget, but like Girl Stinky pulls Sam in because she doesn't want Grandpa to know about Sal. The letter from S, she says, is from Sam.
Oh.
And she pulls him in and makes out and gives him a big smoocheroonie. Even in the episode, we said it was weird. Maybe you blocked it out.
Remember that yeah, I might have.
You said, I don't need to remember Sam making out with anyone.
This one feels more than that. And not just because I can't remember the other one, but also because it's longer, because it needs to happen while you do some other puzzle.
That's true.
And it just feels like, oh yeah, these people are dating, but like the character they've given Jennifer in this episode feels very unique in terms of a character that this would happen to. Mm-hmm. Especially within Telltale games. So yeah, I think she's just on the uniqueness of the character alone. Jennifer is my weekly guy, and she's all right. I'm kind of upset that we're gonna be writing this rebellious version of Jennifer out of existence.
Yeah, I like this one better.
Yeah, I think that the Jennifer from the movies is fine, but they
Yeah,
don't. She doesn't do anything.
she's not memorable.
No, she's not. You can
She
watch the trilogy and forget she's in it every time.
I did. I forgot she was a thing for a while. But yeah, I wish you could just pick and choose things from different timelines. Be like, well, this one's kind of better. Let's go with this.
Maybe that's how it goes. Who knows? Maybe,
Marty is the master of all time.
Yeah, and maybe like the end stinger of this whole season is going to be Marty going back to regular 1986 and seeing Jennifer, and she's like the old Jennifer, and she's like, "Hey, Marty," and he's like, "Oh, hi," and then they walk away. But then as they walk away, you see that she's wearing like the weird shorts with the butt cut out that the rebel Jennifer wears. And
shit, she's cool now.
a little bit of coolness seeped in. Whoa.
A little bit of coolness. I almost said for Weekly Guy, I couldn't in all good consciousness say, I almost gave it to Marty's mom for being such a trooper against George. But that doesn't make her a weekly guy just because she's putting up with a lot of shit. It does make George the unweekly guy, though.
Yeah, George is the aggressor there. Like it's just real rough seeing how some of the characters in this universe are.
Yeah, and like that's the point. Obviously, this is not supposed to be a good future, but even I would say he is like, no thanks.
Yeah, I don't necessarily buy that George McFly was this close to becoming this person who would just be so lame all the time.
At least not this lame. Like he was lame at one point, but never total spy narc lame.
Well, he was lame as in uncool. This guy is bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like the lame as in uncool George laughed at the sitcom in Back to the Future 1 in the funniest way I've ever seen anyone laugh at anything.
Yeah, my dad, I told you, my dad still laughs like that sometimes. Like like not because that's the way he laughs, just, referencing the movie. I don't want it to sound like my dad is yeah, I don't want it to sound like that's just the way my dad is.
Okay, I think that's the episode.
Thank you, episode.
Thanks, episode. Next episode, we'll be talking about Back to the Future, the game, episode 4, Double Vision. So if you want to get a notification when that comes out, and trust me, you will, you can go ahead and subscribe to our feed wherever you can subscribe to a podcast. We're on pretty much everything. You can also rate us wherever you find us, and we'll appreciate that too. If you let me know you did that, I'll read your rating on the show if you like. You don't have to, but that's something that can happen.
Yeah, we will if you want. And you can use any name you want, too, and we'll call you. We'll say, Killa 386.
Yeah, I don't even know what consonant that started with.
That's for them to decide.
Dustin, where can people find you?
People can find me on the internet at Twitter and Instagram at AmazingDJDustin.
You said that as if you were referencing another time we talked about the internet?
No.
Okay.
I just think it's so cool that that we can go on the internet.
Okay. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. I think it's pretty crazy. Back in 1986 you couldn't do that. Back in 1931 you couldn't do that. True. But Mitch, where can they find you at?
Internet.
The internet.
You can go to twitter.com/thewolffm, that's TheWolfeFM, to find me. I don't really do very much very often. But
that's okay, you're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot out of you.
It thanks, Dustin. It kind of does sometimes.
Yeah, see, champ, I think you credit where it's due.
Aw, I'm shaking your hand right now, but you don't know that because you can't see me.
Because you're invisible.
Yeah. And until next time, see you later.
Goodbye.